I will marry your best friend. We haven't registered the marriage, and there's no division of assets. That's how it is, so please understand. I've taken the high-earning banker for myself." In front of me, my husband and my best friend laughed triumphantly. It was shocking enough to discover my husband's affair, but even more so that it was with my best friend. When he proposed, it was just a transition, or I was merely being considered as a candidate for a housekeeper. I sighed deeply and looked at them with pity. To them, I'm just a pathetic woman to be discarded. Huh? You don't know? What are you talking about? I'm not using sweet words like darling anymore. I decided to tell the two, who were over the moon, the truth. I'll make them understand that mocking someone can bring a severe backlash. My name is Yvonne Morris, 39 years old. 10 years ago, I met my banker husband, Tom, through a dating service and he proposed. I was worried that my plain looks weren't his type. But Tom spoke kindly to me. I want to choose a spouse based on their inner qualities. Will you marry me? Moved by his words, I decided to marry Tom. However, married life didn't go smoothly. Most of all, my mother-in-law didn't like me. This unimpressive girl. She sighed during our first meeting. But Tom defended me. Don't say such things about the person I've chosen to marry, so I decided to try to get in good with my mother-in-law. Just before Tom and I started dating, his father had passed away. Right when he was grieving his father's death, he got caught by her. Otherwise, he could have married a much better girl. My mother-in-law complained. Anyway, my unimpressive appearance didn't seem to please her, and she always started talking in a sarcastic tone. While watching TV, she'd say things like, "Such a cute girl. If only her father were here." Tom too. "He was fooled because he's so kind," she said bitter things lightly. Yet, I still pretended not to hear and let it slide. Tom also cautioned her and was kind to me, so our marriage lasted for 10 years. One day, while Tom and I were shopping at the outlet mall, someone tapped me on the shoulder from behind. "Hey! Yvonne, right? Long time no see. Kelly." The woman waving in front of me was Kelly, my best friend from middle school. Kelly was always full of energy and fun to hang out with. However, her family had moved away due to a job transfer, and I hadn't seen her since. Feeling nostalgic, we went to a nearby cafe to catch up. Surprisingly, Kelly still looked stunning, hardly near 40 at all. Kelly was working as an office worker. But she seemed unlucky in finding a marriage partner. Marriage is all about compatibility, right? I just haven't found the right person yet, she said, smiling. Tom was staring at Kelly as if he could bore holes through her. "So, your name is Kelly. I didn't realize Yvonne had such a beautiful friend," he said. "Thank you. What does your husband do?" "He's a banker." As soon as she heard the word banker, I noticed a sparkle in Kelly's eyes. "So he's high earning, huh? Yvonne, you snagged a great husband. I'd love to get to know you both better." "Of course. Why don't you come over for tea?" "I'd love to. I'll stop by soon." Somehow, I was left out of the conversation, but it seemed Tom was trying to get along with my best friend. When they came over for tea, it turned out that Tom and Kelly both liked the same game. Then, Tom happily invited Kelly to play the game, and they played together. Since that day, Kelly started coming to our house often. She would stay for hours under the guise of playing games. Moreover, both Tom and Kelly excluded me. When I was in the same room, they'd ask me to go buy snacks or clean the bathroom, clearly trying to get rid of me. "Tom, you're so good at this game." I'm honored to be praised by Kelly. It seemed like Kelly was getting physically closer to Tom, and Tom was totally smitten. My mother-in-law liked the beautiful Kelly. "Oh my, what a beautiful girl compared to my daughter-in-law." She welcomed Kelly and was increasingly harsh toward me. Since reuniting with Kelly, I've felt more and more alienated. "Hey, aren't you getting a bit too close to Kelly? Don't be silly. Just because you're plain doesn't mean you have to be jealous." Even when I pointed it out, Tom wouldn't listen. They must have exchanged personal contacts because I started receiving emails from Kelly. If you're too controlling, you'll end up being the wife he hates. As they seemed to enjoy each other's more and more, I felt increasingly exhausted. Tom's behavior became more and more strange. Recently, perhaps at Kelly's invitation, he bought a multiplayer online game and started playing it every night after work. That in itself is fine, but I really hate it when he curses or clicks his tongue every time he gets defeated in the game, saying things like, "Stupid kids think they can disrespect adults. Beginners shouldn't drag their feet." Damn it, that's annoying. I know he's not talking to me, but just hearing negative outbursts like that can be subtly stressful. At least he doesn't take it out on things or snap at me. As soon as Tom starts ranting, I escape to the next room and listen to music with headphones. It's an easy enough solution, but it gets tiresome day after day. Why does Tom have to play such infuriating games for hours every day? However, when Kelly is logged into the game and playing with him, his mood seems to improve. I shouldn't mind that my best friend and my husband are getting along, but deep down, I feel uneasy. Additionally, it seemed like Tom's irritation was accelerating because a colleague had started getting recognized for landing big contracts. When I heard Tom vent about the bank, I would just nod and say, "I see, that sounds tough." I'm not familiar with banking, but if I try to give any advice, I'd get snapped at. Don't talk like you know it all. But Tom doesn't do the reverse for me. When I talked to him about something I failed at, he'd snort and say disdainfully, "Everyone's so hopeless." It seems he has no intention of offering me words of consolation. Thinking this, I focused on Tom and remained silent for a while, and he awkwardly went to the bedroom. Since then, our relationship has gradually worsened. Moreover, Tom began to criticize my cooking. More chicken and salad again? I don't want this country-style food. Don't say that. You're already not getting enough vegetables as it is. I'm sick of eating old lady food, I'm going out to eat. As the distance between us grew, so did Tom's frequency of contacting Kelly. He often went out for coffee with Kelly, which displeased me. Hey, are you going to see Kelly again? You're married. You should think about that a little. What? Are you having some nasty fantasies? Tom would get in a bad mood when I tried to hold him back. It's just game advice as friends. It's okay. Kelly tried to reassure me, but my anxiety only grew. Tom's arrogant attitude remained unshaken as much as I worried. He started to make derogatory comments about people loud enough for them to hear. When we went to a restaurant for a limited-time steak special, there was a father with 2 kids next to us. The children were really cute and friendly, greeting everyone, creating a pleasant atmosphere in the restaurant. While I was ordering from the server, Tom seemed to be listening to the next table and then started talking to me in a demeaning tone. Looks single. Probably can't expect much of an income. Hey, what are you suddenly talking about? Maybe his wife ran off on him. He still has his ring on, must be holding on to some hope. There was a mean-spiritedness evident on Tom's face. Was he always such a rude person? You shouldn't say things like that without thinking. Everyone has their circumstances. I whispered this to Tom, but it seemed to irritate him, and next he spoke to the children. Is your mom not around? That's too bad. The father smiled wryly and replied. She passed away last year due to illness. Sorry for bringing up such a gloomy topic. Of course. What, she didn't run off? That's boring. Misfortune might be contagious, let's leave this place. Normally, you'd apologize for bringing up such a topic. I could feel my face burning with shame. How could he say such things? The server had heard our exchange, and I couldn't stay there any longer. After apologizing to the family, I left the restaurant as I wished. Luckily, the food hadn't been made yet since we had just ordered. When we got home, I confronted Tom. Why would you say that? Didn't you think that was rude? But it's true, isn't it? Or what, are you having an affair with that poor father? I was shocked by Tom's absurd accusation. He wasn't like this before. I was starting to see no future in living with Tom. Trouble continued as my mother-in-law slipped on a slope during her walk and fractured her leg. The surgery was successful, but she had to do her rehabilitation at home. Automatically, I ended up taking care of her, but my mother-in-law continued her imperious behavior even while I cared for her. Hurry up and bring me my meal. You're such a slow daughter-in-law. Walking to the living room can also be part of your rehab. Oh. Are you trying to make a frail old woman walk? What a cruel daughter-in-law. Since my mother-in-law wouldn't budge and complained about everything to Tom, I ended up getting scolded by Tom when he came home. Hey, Mom can't move right now. Don't you have any compassion? It'd be terrible if something happened to her. But, the doctor said if she doesn't move, her legs will stiffen up. No excuses. Just make sure nothing happens to her, or I won't forgive you. Despite being her son, Tom did nothing. Honestly, taking care of my mother-in-law alone is a huge burden. Tom started avoiding coming home, saying that my exhausted appearance was depressing, using work as an excuse. Even when I talked to Kelly, she'd say, "You really need to take good care of Tom's mom." That's a wife's duty, isn't it, always siding with Tom? My mental stress kept building up. After 6 months, I had lost 44 pounds due to the stress of caregiving. Thanks to my care, my mother-in-law can now walk a little around the neighborhood. I was originally a bit overweight, but I rapidly dropped below average. It wasn't intentional, and the weight loss was stressful, so looking in the mirror, I appeared more haggard from lack of sleep than slim. One holiday. I looked in the mirror and thought I had to do something about my miserable state. I've lost 44 pounds in 6 months taking care of your mother. So, I need to buy some clothes that fit now. Can you watch her this Saturday? You're always home, any clothes should be fine. You're not planning to cheat, are you? You should be thanking Mom for getting in shape. I was speechless. After 2 months of caregiving and managing the household, I couldn't even leave Tom for one day to buy new clothes or get a haircut without him making a fuss. What am I to this person? Do I have to feel so miserable without even a word of appreciation? Thinking this, tears started to well up, and I began to sob. Tom looked disgusted and offered no comfort. Hey, stop it, you're being gross. It's time for you to go. With that, he left the room. And unbelievably, he came back with Kelly. Kelly was leaning on Tom's arm, looking down at me. It was clear they were more than just acquaintances. Then Tom dropped a bombshell. I'm marrying your best friend. No marriage registration, no division of assets. Tom lifted his chin in triumph, and Kelly said smugly, "That's right. I've taken the high-earning banker for myself." I was shocked to discover Tom's affair, but even more so that it was with Kelly, who was supposed to be my best friend. It turned out Kelly had approached Tom, a banker, just to snag him. She kept saying pleasing things to get in his good graces. Tom, you're so great at games. It would be even cooler if you completely beat those selfish kids. With your background, no one can talk down to you. Encouraged by her constant praise, Tom became more arrogant. And when Tom was away, Kelly would cook his favorite dishes, winning his heart through his stomach. I had been puzzled by Tom's recent drastic change, but now it all made sense. What do you mean we're not officially registered? Oh, honestly, I was just living with you to have someone take care of the house and my mom. If a better woman came along, I could switch without any damage to my clean record or worry about dividing assets, right? Tom seemed almost amused as he spoiled the truth. I really wanted to kick you out as soon as I met Kelly, but my mom's accident happened, so I let you stay. But since you're defying me, it's time for you to leave. Since we're not registered, I can marry with a clean record, and I don't have to waste money on splitting any assets. Tom is really smart. Apparently, after our wedding ceremony, Tom had not submitted our marriage registration. I'll handle it, the city hall is too far. I was foolish to believe him. After our argument, Tom went to the city hall with Kelly and submitted a marriage application. Naturally, since he hadn't registered with me, the two of them became legally married quite easily. Kelly decided to quit her job because of her marriage. Tom pulled out the marriage form he filled out 10 years ago, in front of me, and tore it up.
Kelly, why did you betray me? Weren't we best friends?
Oh, honestly, you were just a foil. A high earner like Tom is too good for someone like you. It was hard finding a good man through dating services. So, a woman more suitable for me did exist. That means you should leave now. I'm starting my real married life. So, I was the only one who thought we were best friends. A quiet laugh bubbled up from deep within me. Finally realized it, huh? So, what are you gonna do now? You hardly have any money. Gonna be homeless? Ah, poor thing. Well, you were in a marriage above your station, so it can't be helped. I sighed deeply and looked at them with pity. Huh? You don't know? What are you talking about? I'm not going to use sweet words like darling anymore. I decided to tell the truth to the two of them, who were over the moon. My assets are worth $2 million, so I don't need to worry about my livelihood. It looks like you've finally lost it. Tom burst out laughing when he heard this, thinking it was just sour grapes. Considering how I had been, it was natural for him to think that way. I'm not crazy. And I knew that you hadn't filed our marriage registration.
What?
One day, while I was taking care of his mother, I cleaned Tom's room, which he seldom used. I found something like a wooden safe hidden deep in the closet. It was quite old, and during cleaning, the lid opened. And I saw a marriage registration form filled out inside. Why would this be here? Wasn't it supposed to have been submitted to the city hall? It couldn't just have been forgotten. It was securely stored. My mind was in turmoil. I couldn't confront Tom easily, and I didn't want to arouse suspicion, so I put the marriage registration back in its place. While trying to figure out Tom's intentions, I overheard him on a speakerphone call with his mother. So, how are things going with your new girl? Oh, I'll be getting rid of that wife soon. That's smart of you. She hasn't even noticed the marriage registration wasn't filed. That's good, because it keeps our valuable assets from going to that wife. I couldn't believe it. I had married Tom because I loved him, but he had never intended to stay married from the start. Using the excuse of taking care of my mother, look at her now, messy hair, full of liver spot, just wearing glasses and no makeup. Frankly, her appearance has gotten even worse. She's not fit to be my wife anymore. I was really creeped out when I heard those cold words through the speaker. That explained the mystery of the marriage registration in the safe. I was going to be left broken and thrown out. Realizing this, I bought a used computer and started honing my skills to become independent. While caring for my mother-in-law, I spent most of my time at home on the computer. I bought programming books from the bookstore, read them thoroughly, and practiced. My table quickly became filled with books on programming languages. I had a knack for computer languages like Java and C++, and I even started developing apps. As I released several simple games while learning techniques for promoting them on social media, they hit it big and started bringing in revenue. When I timed video tutorials right, I also began to earn advertising income. Thanks to this, companies started approaching me with programming requests. Since my income surpassed the limits of a sole proprietorship, I formed a company in my name and started depositing the money there. And releasing an app isn't the end. They require maintenance and frequent updates, but I'm meticulous about handling these, which seems to be well received. Even while being overworked by my mother-in-law, having these goals helped me to keep pushing forward. I managed my finances through online banking, so I didn't need to visit Tom's bank very often. I asked the bank to keep it a secret from Tom, so he had no idea I was making money. This way, I was prepared to leave this house at any time. And then, 6 months later, I faced the revelation about the unsubmitted marriage registration from Tom. At this point in my explanation, Tom was flustered.
What? I had no idea about this.
I didn't tell you. But after how you've treated me, I can't consider your feelings anymore. Maybe I should go to the bank and pull out all the money I've deposited.
Wait! If you do that, I'll be the one who gets in trouble.
Tom tried to cling to me, but my heart was no longer with him.
So you hid the fact you were making so much money and deceived me. I'll sue you.
It's totally unfair that you have all this money. You've been taking care of your husband, so you should give me some of that as compensation. Both of them were behaving ridiculously. That's a harsh joke. And Tom, you and I were strangers to begin with. Even if we were common-law marriage, I have everything documented in a diary, and I've recorded our conversation on my phone. You can't touch my assets. I said this and, with my bags already packed, I left the house, ignoring their clamoring. After that, I received numerous phone calls. From Tom, a mix of sweet purring voice. Hey, you worked so hard to earn my approval, right? That money, we could manage it more effectively together, couldn't we? From my former best friend, I received condescending words. Hey, just because you weren't impressive, you tried hard. But I'll take $2 million as a gift for marriage. There's this designer bag I really want. And from my mother-in-law, there was relentless scolding.
What do you mean? I had no idea you were earning money. You lied, so you should pay me $200,000 in damages for emotional distress.
Just listening to them was exhausting. I won't be helping with the housework or anything anymore. According to you, I'm the kind of woman who exploits men's weaknesses, so it's better if we cut ties.
What? How dare you? Such an insolent daughter-in-law.
I'm not your daughter-in-law anymore. Also, part of the living expenses were from my earnings, but I'm stopping that too. Tom, you hate giving money, but you'll just have to manage somehow, however you please. Tom hardly contributed financially during the time I cared for his mother. Life will likely be much tougher without me around. And can his mother endure that? There's another thing, his mother hasn't fully recovered. Tom wouldn't know since he never accompanied her to the hospital, but her muscles have weakened significantly and she needs to move around or she'll become bedridden. I used to encourage her and coax her to walk as much as possible, knowing her tendency to be lazy. Tom likely won't bother, and Kelly certainly won't help. You really should try to walk as much as you can. If you become unable to walk, don't blame me. Is that a threat? Thanks to you, Mom's fit as a fiddle. When we divorced, I was mocked like this. Tom probably thought it was just my sour grapes. I've given my warning, so it's no longer my concern. Later on, Tom apparently failed at investing. I knew because he told me he needed an additional $14,000 by 3 p.m. today, and if he couldn't come up with it, things would be pretty bad, so he asked me to lend it to him. When I firmly said no, he persistently messaged and called.
Come on. You have the money, right? Help me out. That's what happens when you dive into investments without proper knowledge. My money isn't there to cover your blunders. If someone like you can make $2 million, there's no way I can't make it too.
How low did he really see me? I didn't want to be emotionally drained for Tom's sake any longer. I tried to firmly reject Tom's requests.
At least lend me some money. I'll do better this time. No. There's no guarantee it will come back, and I don't want anything more to do with you. Don't mess with me. Don't get cocky just because you're Yvonne.
I was yelled at with a loud voice after a teary attempt, so I hung up in disgust and left it at that. I started recording midway and consulted with the police. It's not uncommon for financially struggling ex-spouses to persistently interfere. We will increase patrols just to be safe. They assured me, so I felt temporarily relieved. By the way, if you don't pay the additional margin in stocks and such, a forced liquidation occurs. If the settlement goes negative, it becomes a debt. Well, if the trades continue to drop, adding more margin could increase the debt, so sometimes it's better to let it go to forced liquidation. If the value is likely to recover, it's better to add more margin, but Tom probably doesn't understand that balance. If the forced liquidation isn't enough, it can turn into debt, and there's also a chance it might not. However, from his panicked state, I suspect he might have used money meant for living expenses or something he shouldn't have. I also invest in stocks with the funds I've accumulated, so I have some knowledge. Stocks don't cause huge losses if you don't buy or sell weirdly. However, trying to make a big profit in a short term can turn it into a gamble. Tom is neither patient nor foresight. If I had been there, I would have opposed and stopped him, but it's no longer my concern. A week later, I considered buying a new car to reduce expenses. However, when I logged into my online bank, it seemed the balance was suspiciously low. Realizing something was clearly wrong, I headed to the bank. When I asked for the staff at the counter, the staff hurriedly retreated to the back. Then, the branch manager came out looking flustered.
Ms. Morris, I am terribly sorry, but upon verification.
The branch manager, wiping sweat from his forehead, informed me that Tom had unauthorized access to my online account and transferred my assets to his account. Indeed, Tom was in a position to access the account information, so he probably tried to secretly skim money to cover his investment losses. Being a banker, he should know that doing such a thing wouldn't go unpunished. The branch manager called Tom in, but Tom was sullen.
Come on, that money is mine as the husband, right? The fact that you hid it is what's really malicious. So I confiscated it. Got a problem with that? You and I were never actually married. Don't start with convenient stories now. We're complete strangers. This is a crime of embezzlement of a client's money. What, getting cocky, huh? Branch manager, don't listen to her. It's just the divorce alimony I took.
Then, shouts from the branch manager filled the meeting room.
What are you even saying? Don't you think that's unreasonable? Huh? What? Did I do something that bad?
For embezzlement and speaking so rudely to me, a client, the branch manager scolded Tom. It was obviously not something that could be hidden, so they decided to call 911. At that point, Tom finally panicked.
What? The police? Why? I've been working for this bank for so long. You can't expect to get away with something like this.
There was a shouting match in the meeting room, and ultimately Tom was taken away by the police. Since Tom's own finances couldn't cover everything, the bank agreed to shoulder part of the repayment. It turned into a big enough scandal to be reported in the local newspaper, and Tom was fired. He had been respected in the neighborhood as a banker, but that respect was ruined, and he couldn't live in his house anymore. With no money left, he moved to a cheap apartment while looking for a job. However, since his real name had been published in the newspaper, any company that found the news article turned him away.
If you had just kept quiet, I could be rich by now. My career is ruined. I didn't even get severance pay.
I blocked his calls, so endless emails full of resentment came in, all of which I ignored. Kelly also kept contacting persistently.
Stop with your petty harassment. Thanks to you, being a banker's wife is over. You're just looking down on us because we have no money.
These people seem not to understand the concept of reaping what you sow. Thanks to the branch manager's sincere apology, I decided to continue depositing my money with the bank. The problem was Tom, not the bank. I decided to forget about Tom and his associates for a while and focus on my own work. Having started investing the money I earned, it turned out well, and now I have about $10 million. As my business grew beyond what I could handle alone, I started recruiting staff online. Graduate students and skilled engineers began to join me. Among them was a single father I recognized. The same man Tom had belittled at the restaurant. He had started engineering from home so he could take care of his children.
I can't replace their mother, but I still don't want my kids to feel deprived, he told me.
I apologized for Tom's past rudeness. He forgave me, saying those harsh words had spurred him to push harder, though at the time I had been mortified. While busy running my company, I bumped into Tom as I was returning from a business meeting. He had changed so much that I didn't recognize him at first. When he saw me, his eyes lit up, and he suddenly shouted in the middle of the street.
Yvonne? Is that you, Yvonne? Please, hear me out. What? Stop, not here.
Considering the public setting, I agreed to listen to him inside a nearby cafe by the police station. Ultimately, he was after money and reconciliation. Tom apparently couldn't make his newly secured jobs work. Addicted to an online game, his habit of using harsh language had spilled over into the real world. Despite my warnings, it had become a bad habit he couldn't break. Moreover, his daily diet was disastrous. Natural and genuine high-quality obsessed Kelly, an ardent believer in olive oil. She could only cook greasy dishes laden with olive oil and cheese. Until now, she had been arranging deli foods to look appealing. Thanks to that, Tom was now obese and covered in acne. I had been honing my skills in Japanese cuisine because I knew eating fatty foods could worsen acne. Such high-fat meals are tough on older people like his mother, and even younger people risk lifestyle diseases if they eat that way daily. Tom had indeed become very unhealthy. As for Kelly, she was splurging and indulging in constant dining out. Even though they worked, saving money was difficult. Olive oil isn't cheap enough to buy by the bottle. Kelly started using vegetable and sesame oil as a substitute, and adding vinegar claiming it was healthier, which only made the flavors even more bizarre. Kelly, who had hoped to enjoy a lavish lifestyle in my place, ended up miserable. She became frustrated with her now significantly overweight middle-aged husband and cheated on him, but that affair was discovered by the other man's wife. This family ended up in debt.
If you hadn't left, I could be enjoying a pleasant retirement now. If only that wife were here, we could have been millionaires.
Kelly was spitefully told by her mother-in-law every day, ruining their marital relationship. Kelly's former beauty was nowhere to be seen. Even though her mother-in-law could become mobile with some effort in rehabilitation, she preferred to skip it, leading to increased immobility and more discomfort. Did she really think, after being so mean, that she could get financial support from me?
Look, I can't cook, and just looking at Kelly's cooking makes my stomach turn. Mom can't move, I have no money, I feel like I'm being torn apart. Help me!
I do feel sorry for him, but I haven't forgotten being called a tasteless old lady when it came to cooking. Apparently, the oil forms a layer over 0.1 inches thick on the soup she makes, so it's indeed quite terrible. No way.
I'm not a nurse, a housekeeper, or an ATM. Then hire me at your company and make me an executive.
How shameless can you get? I rejected Tom's pleading. Who would want to return to that kind of hell? Tom, with a look of despair, said, I did cheat, but only once, and if you round that off, it's 0. So technically, I haven't cheated. Let's start over as husband and wife. I'll dump her for you, but his words were as unreliable as someone who faked submitting a marriage certificate. I ignored Tom and walked out of the shop. Then Tom started shaking and seemed to have a seizure. If I still cared about him, I might have panicked and called an ambulance. But watching him calmly, he kept saying I'm in pain, while sneaking glances at me. I was too exasperated to say anything. As I walked outside, he hurriedly followed, but retreated when I entered a police station. I had recorded our conversation just in case, so I sent it to Kelly.
He said, let's start over as husband and wife. We were never actually married to begin with, and now your husband is contacting me. What? What is he doing? Is he betraying me?
Even though Kelly herself had betrayed Tom by cheating, she too was out of line. Despite being newlyweds, it seems their relationship quickly deteriorated. I hired new security personnel and deleted Tom and Kelly's contact information. Thanks to stocks and investments, my company is thriving without facing financial difficulties. The single father also seems to be managing well, covering his children's school and living expenses with his salary from the company. While I am busy with work, my life is much more fulfilling now than it ever was with Tom.
Boss, I need you to look at this program.
Understood, I'll be right there. I closed my heavily used programming reference book and headed to my employee's desk. In a note written in my husband's handwriting, it said he'd be on a business trip for a month. Seeing it, I was certain. Our marriage was over. It was that night, alone in a room with no one around, lost in thought. What's happening now? In the dead of night while my husband was away, I suddenly heard the cry of a baby. I rushed to the front door and found a letter. And it read, "I can't raise him." To my astonishment, there was a baby inside a cardboard box along with the letter.
Why is there a baby here?
It was a situation I had only seen on TV shows. My mind raced, unsure of what to do, and the next thing I knew, I was calling my husband.
Don't bother me when I'm busy. You're getting in the way.
My husband snapped at me for calling. But when I told him about the baby, he responded with startling words.
We're gonna raise this child. Got it?
With that, he hung up. His words lingered in my mind. There was definitely something going on. Well, I've got my own suspicions. At this point, one or two more problems don't matter. I'll find out everything and drag you down. My name is Jessica. I'm a 40-year-old housewife. I used to work for a major corporation, but I resigned when I married my husband, Mike. I met Mike about 5 years ago. Back then, he came to the company I worked for as a salesman. He was cheerful and a bit of a joker. I wondered then if he was cut out for sales. But when it came to work, he spoke seriously and clearly, surprising all the coworkers. I still remember how he left such an impression on me. A month later, while taking a break on a park bench near the office, a man in a suit approached and asked, "Is this seat taken?" Feeling annoyed, I didn't look at the man's face and just said, "Sure," intending to leave the spot. But then the man hurriedly stopped me. "Hey there, Ms. Johnson. How've you been?" Wondering how he knew my last name, I looked at him. "Oh? Mr. Smith? Good to see you. Thanks for the other day." "Thank you." "Thanks to you, Mr. Johnson, everything at work went smoothly. I really appreciate it." Mike, who I hadn't seen in a while, was just as playful as before, chatting up a storm with me. I naturally talked to him about work and everyday life. From then on, whenever I took a break, Mike was always there beside me. Although it was just for a short time, I cherished the moments spent with Mike, and soon found myself wanting to be with him all the time. Turns out, Mike felt the same way. How about a real date? Not just a 1-hour break, but a genuine date. Yes. That was the turning point for us. We became a couple, and a year later, we got married. And this year, we celebrated our 4th wedding anniversary. Jessica, thanks for being with me all these years. Same goes for you. Thanks for always cherishing me. Celebrating our wedding anniversary together. I was overwhelmed with emotion, feeling so fortunate to have married Mike, and tears welled up. Jessica, it's become a yearly tradition for you to cry, huh? Shush. They're happy tears, okay? Give me a break.
I get it.
This happiness will last forever. Back then, that's what I believed. But as our 5th anniversary approached, I realized that had been just an illusion. For the past 6 months, Mike's been coming home late. He used to always come home right on time, but now he's usually home after 8 p.m.
Honey, how much longer are these late nights gonna last?
It's been half a year.
This never used to happen. Doesn't it seem strange? Business hasn't been great. At this rate, our bonuses are gonna get cut. Everyone's working their tails off.
Under normal circumstances, I would have believed him, but something felt off to me. My husband's company, although considered a small to medium-sized business, is quite well known around here. Their revenues have been increasing year after year, and they're always hiring new employees. Can a company like that suddenly experience a drop in sales? Having employees work overtime for half a year because of tight sales is simply not normal. I don't want to doubt my husband's words, but there's this nagging feeling deep down. Oh, by the way, I'm gonna head out for a bit. Huh? You just got home. I'm just meeting someone I know, that's okay, right? Considering he's been working late recently, I figured it wouldn't hurt to let him go once in a while. Just don't be out too late, okay? You've got work tomorrow. Thanks. I'll be back soon. Mike quickly changed into his casual clothes and with a big grin, left to meet his friend. That night, Mike didn't return home until past midnight. Oh, sorry, did I wake you? You're okay? That's pretty late. We just got caught up chatting, and it got late. I see. I'm sleepy, so I'm gonna head to bed. Good night. The next morning, when I woke up, Mike, who usually sleeps beside me, was nowhere to be found. Rubbing my sleepy eyes and looking around, he was still missing. Checking my phone, it was just past 5 a.m., even before my alarm. Mike? I called out, but there was no answer from him. I wondered where he went and headed to the living room, only to find Mike sound asleep on the couch. Why are you sleeping here? I tried to wake him up to get him to bed, but Mike didn't budge. And then something fell from his hand to my feet. Is that his phone? I picked up the dropped phone intending to place it on the table. That's when I noticed the image of a woman's back on the phone's screen. Who is this? A celebrity? I guess it's fine. I put my phone on the table. Can't get back to sleep now. Maybe I should take a walk. I left my husband sleeping on the couch and decided to go for a walk. Stepping outside, the warm sunlight and a refreshing breeze greeted me. Ah, this feels so good. Morning walks on a sunny day are the best. It's a great way to start the day. After about an hour, I came back home. When I entered the living room, I found my husband looking sternly at my phone. Good morning. Why the long face? Want something to drink? No thanks. Usually, he'd reply with a smile, but today he seemed off. Maybe he's just groggy from sleep? But then, his next words made me realize it was something different. Hey, can you not talk to me so much in the morning? Huh? It's just, you're kind of annoying. I was taken aback. He'd never spoken to me like that before. Without another word, he went to our bedroom, changed into his suit, and left for work without breakfast. Without our usual morning hug. While I was doing housework, puzzled by my husband's strange behavior this morning, my cell phone rang from an unknown caller. Normally, I wouldn't answer calls from unknown numbers, but for some reason, I picked up this time. Hello? Hi, is this Jessica? Yes, who's this? It's been a while. It's Sarah. Sarah Lewis. Remember we worked together a while back? Lewis. Sarah Lewis. Then it hit me. 12 years ago, right after graduating from college, I worked at a convenience store for a short time. Back then, Sarah Lewis, who was still in high school, worked there too. Why on earth was she calling me now? And how did she get my cell number? It's been ages, Sarah. I never expected a call from you. It's quite a surprise. I never thought I'd call you either, Jessica. If it weren't for that crazy coincidence, I wouldn't have. But I thought, why not give it a shot? She was always like this. She probably doesn't mean any harm, but there's always something about Sarah that gets under my skin. That's just so typical of her. So, what's this big coincidence? You're not gonna believe this. I work at the same company as Mike. Your husband, Mike. Really? When I heard from Mike that his wife's name was Jessica, I wondered if it was you. And it turned out I was right. When I told Mike we used to work together, he gave me your number. It was indeed a crazy coincidence that the girl I worked with back then was now working with my husband. But at the same time, I felt a bit betrayed that Mike gave her my number without asking me first. I'm glad you called, but aren't you working right now? Is it okay to be on the phone? Obviously, it's not, but now that I've heard your voice, I should get back to work. Talk to you later. Bye. She's still as lively as ever. I never thought I'd hear her voice again after 15 years. It made me a little nostalgic, thinking about the old times. It's been 15 years since then. And later that night. I'm home. Welcome back. You must be tired. The bath is ready, so you can hop in. Wait, what? From behind my husband, a woman suddenly appeared and greeted, "Good evening." A colleague from work?
It's me, Sarah.
Unbelievably, my husband had come home with Sarah, who had called earlier that day. Both of them held large shopping bags in their hands. Hold on a minute. I wasn't told you'd be coming over. When Sarah called earlier, she said she'd catch up later. You should have figured she'd come today. As a wife, you should know these things. I was slightly infuriated by my husband's irrational comment, but held my tongue since we had a guest. I wonder if they're that close, calling Sarah with such a friendly nickname? Hee hee. I caught a brief chuckle from her. What was that? While I was distracted, the two had moved into the living room. I let out a sigh and followed, only to find them laying out a bunch of alcohol and snacks from their bags on the table. What do you think you're doing?
We're gonna have some drinks here. Mike said we should drink at home, so I bought a bunch.
That's not enough, make us something. I wasn't expecting this. I only made dinner for the two of us. With that, Mike gave me a cold look and said, "Then go buy something now." What's with that attitude?
Excuse me? You have a problem when I'm the one feeding you?
His chilly gaze was now replaced with a commanding tone. This was nothing like the Mike I knew, and as I tried to hide my shock, she gave me a sly smile. Even in my own home, what is this overwhelming feeling of alienation? Unable to bear being there any longer, I immediately headed out to do some shopping.
What the hell?
Although worried someone might hear, I couldn't stop muttering to myself. This continued even as I shopped at the grocery store. This should be enough. An hour later, I returned to the apartment after finishing my shopping. Standing at the front door, I took a deep breath and opened it, only to find an eerie silence enveloping the place. Hello? There was no sound of their voices. I gently opened the living room door and saw the two of them, snuggled up on the couch, asleep like a couple. I stood there, frozen, unable to process what was happening right before my eyes. And from that day on, Sarah's visits to our home became frequent. She'd come over with Mike, and they'd casually start their evening drinks as if it was second nature. Hey, get us something to eat. I'd love a steak, please. Come on now. If you heard her, hurry up and get it. It felt as though I had been relegated to a mere housemaid, taken for granted. Mike doted on Sarah, and it was evident he hardly had me in his thoughts anymore. On her part, Sarah often threw condescending remarks my way, making me feel utterly humiliated. I'd never felt so low. My feelings towards the two of them were nothing but negative. Ever since Sarah started calling, I felt like I had been living in a never-ending nightmare. I bore the brunt of their taunts and verbal abuse. I often found myself wanting to escape this toxic environment. 6 months after Sarah started visiting, she suddenly stopped showing up. Around the same time, Mike began coming home even later. One morning, I woke up and noticed Mike wasn't in bed. I headed to the living room and found a note on the table. In Mike's handwriting, it simply read, "Gonna be on a business trip for a month." Seeing that, I was certain. I realized our marriage was over. One night, as I sat alone in the empty room lost in thought. What was that? In the middle of the night, while Mike was away, I suddenly heard the cries of a baby. I rushed to the front door and found a letter. It read, "I can't raise this child." Incredibly, inside the cardboard box was a baby, along with a letter.
Why is there a baby?
It was a situation I had only ever seen on TV shows, but now it was happening to me. My mind raced in panic, unsure of what to do, and before I knew it, I was calling my husband.
Don't bother me when I'm busy. You're disturbing me.
He was furious that I had called. But when I told him about the baby, he replied with shocking words.
We're gonna raise that child. Got it?
And with that, he hung up. His words lingered in my mind. Something was definitely up. But I had my own plans. I didn't care if 1 or 2 more troubles came up now. So, I'll uncover everything and bring you down to rock bottom. After that, I quickly grabbed some things and left the apartment. 2 hours by car. It's been a long time since I've been back. Even outside the apartment, there was a place for me to go.
Welcome home.
Mom, I'm back. I had already informed my mother that I would be returning. At the same time, I had asked her for a favor. Mom, about that favor I asked. I've made the contacts, Jessica. Now, all you need to do is act. Though I had come back to my parents' house thinking of resting and healing from everything, there was no time for that. My husband, Mike, would be back from his business trip in a month. I had things that needed to be done by then. One day, as I was cleaning the room, Mike called. Hello?
Hey! Where the heck are you right now?
My husband was immediately aggressive on the phone.
You call out of the blue? What on earth could someone on a business trip possibly want? I don't give a darn about that. Where are you?
I came back early. It's amazing you still have a job. Normally, you'd be the first on the layoff list.
Shut it. Just tell me where you are.
No matter what I said, Mike insisted on knowing my location, making it impossible to have a conversation. I'm at my parents' house.
The kid's there with you, right?
Yes, sleeping soundly in the back room. Come back with the child right now. Got it? Get back here immediately. His behavior was so different from before, it reminded me of the man he once was. You've changed a lot. You weren't like this before.
People change, Jessica. Anyway, don't forget what I just told you. Understand?
With that, Mike hung up. It's absurd. But if he hasn't mentioned that thing, does that mean he hasn't noticed it? If he returned to the apartment, he'd definitely see it. If that's the case, it makes sense. It became clear that Mike wasn't at the apartment. Not wanting to waste this opportunity, I drove straight there. Upon arriving, I grabbed that from the table and immediately headed to a specific location. 20 minutes later, I arrived at a single-family apartment complex. You live in a pretty nice place. There was a familiar compact car parked in front of the apartment. Just as I thought. A familiar compact car. It's Mike's car. And the fact that it's parked here is proof that my husband must be here. What could be so important that he'd cut his business trip short to be here? At that moment. Then it happened. From inside the house, I heard a woman's scream. And right after that, a man's furious shout echoed. This might be bad. I quickly pulled out my cell from my bag and called someone. However, throughout that time, cries from the woman and shouts from the man continued to emanate from the house. Just when I was getting really worried, a car pulled up behind me. Oh. I rang the doorbell, but no one answered. On a whim, I tried the doorknob and to my surprise, it was unlocked. I cautiously opened the door and called out, but there was no response. From deeper within the house, a voice cried out for help. Rushing to the room from where the voice came, I found a man menacingly approaching Sarah with a look of fury on his face. Why are you here? What are you doing? You shouldn't be threatening a woman like this, especially as an adult.
Shut up. Stay out of it. This is between me and her.
A problem, huh? I couldn't help but think, isn't the problem yourself, in my mind?
Jessica! Please help me! He suddenly attacked me.
All right. I can see what's happening, so you don't have to spell it out for me.
Well, what? You just told him not to treat women like this. And now you're being so dismissive of me? Can't you see I'm in distress?
That's because I get it, okay? Just be quiet for a second. I've got things to handle. While Sarah was complaining about something, I had more pressing matters to attend to. I have more important things to deal with than that. I stepped outside the house for a moment and headed towards a car parked outside. I called out, "Excuse me," and from inside the car, a well-built man stepped out. And with that man, I headed back to the room where the two were.
Who's this old man? Why's he here?
Upon seeing the new arrival, both of them froze. Allow me to introduce you. This is Sarah's father, Mr. Carter.
What?
Seeing Sarah's father, Mike instantly distanced himself from Sarah, a complete change from his previous demeanor. On the other hand, Sarah's face turned pale as a ghost at the sight of her father and she froze, looking down. Nice to meet you. I'm Carter, Sarah's father. Jessica called me over. What the heck is going on here? Sarah, what's your relationship with this man? The two clearly looked intimidated by Carter's imposing tone and demeanor. He's my husband.
What? So, you're telling me you were having an affair with my daughter?
Well, that's one way to put it. At that moment, Carter's face turned fierce, glaring at Mike with piercing eyes. Mike looked like a deer caught in headlights, completely frozen. Soon, Carter's face was inches away from Mike's. Mike looked utterly clueless about what to do next.
You made your bed, now lie in it.
It wasn't clear if it was these words that broke Mike's spirit, but he collapsed on the spot. From her bag, I took out a paper and placed it in front of Mike. I think you'll understand when you see it, it's a divorce paper. My name's already on it. You just need to sign. She also placed a pen next to it. Defeated, Mike signed the divorce paper without resistance. Thanks. As for alimony, my lawyer will be in touch later. We'll discuss the details then. Mike silently nodded. But this incident wasn't over. Standing nearby was the very man who had ruined Jessica's life. You're truly despicable. You played with my feelings, always threatening to leave. And this is how you end things? Jessica spat these words out at her ex-husband. But, to her surprise, he responded with newfound vigor.
You say I played with you? Don't kid yourself. You were the one who approached me first. Saying you had feelings for me. Saying you wanted to be with me. If it wasn't for you, my life wouldn't have turned out this way. What the heck? Anyone who'd take that seriously is the fool. First off, thinking you're some big catch is your first mistake. Because of you, my life's a complete mess. Being seen by my dad in a place like this is just the worst. Huh? What's that supposed to mean? If anyone's the worst here, it's you. I turned you down, but you kept saying you wanted our baby. And when the baby came, you said it wasn't what you intended, that you didn't expect to really have a child. That you wanted to live your life and wanted a break, but you didn't want the responsibility of the child. So, leave it to me, right? You're way more to be blamed. I didn't say all that.
This is going nowhere, and listening to this nonsense is just a waste of time. Okay, stop. I've heard enough from both of you, just cut it out. You're making everyone irritated. The two looked over, panting, as if wanting to say something. I could tell they wanted to say something, but probably seeing Carter standing next to me, they seemed too scared to utter a word. I get it, if you have a big, intimidating guy like that staring you down, you'd be too scared to say anything. Then Carter suddenly asked Sarah. What's going on with this story? Are you pregnant with his child?
Oh, no, Dad, it's not like that. I didn't want this, but he was so pushy.
Darn it. I completely forgot to mention that Sarah was pregnant.
What? Why are you blaming me? You were the one who came on to me. It's not true. I didn't do anything. How can a baby come if you didn't do anything?
Adding fuel to the fire. You.
That's right. If you hadn't done anything, none of this would have happened. I probably shouldn't have invited him in the first place. Hey, hold on.
She added more. I thought we were pretty much done, but since we're here, I'll give you this. I casually tossed several photos onto the table. Those pictures undeniably proved their affair. These are pictures capturing the two of you in the act. It was a real hassle getting these. While you were on your business trip, I had the divorce papers drawn up and hired a detective. All this in such a short time, you know? Why would you go through all that trouble? Well, I had to. I can draw up the divorce papers myself, but to catch you two cheating, I needed a pro. It did cost me a pretty penny, but thanks to that, I got the evidence. I'm just presenting it a bit late, but you have to really take in the fact that you cheated, right? The sight of the incriminating photos completely deflated the two. Just as they thought it was over. You two better be ready for what's coming. What? Dad. Carter only found out about Sarah and Mike's affair moments ago. And it was only from words. Upon seeing the photos, he realized that they really were having an affair. Sarah, I'm taking you straight home. We'll decide what to do next once we're there. And Mike, you'll have to pay Jessica alimony, right? You need the money ASAP, don't you? I know a place where you can make good money. Upon hearing this, both were trembling in fear. Days later, both of them resigned from their jobs. The reason was that news of their affair had spread throughout the office, making it uncomfortable for them to stay. Later, as Carter told it, Sarah tried to go back to her parents' home and hoped they would forgive her. However, their anger didn't subside, and she was kicked out along with her baby. Now, she's living in a rundown apartment, working day and night to support her child. As for her ex-husband, he's working at a high-paying job Carter recommended to cover the alimony and child support. Apparently, it's a job at sea, and once he leaves, he can't return for several months. Well, after such a betrayal, it's only fitting. As for me, I stayed at my parents' home. My mother helps with the housework, and I have found a new job and made some new friends. Life feels more fulfilling now. My parents often ask when I'll marry again, but I think I'll wait for a while. Maybe when I meet the right person, I'll think about it. For now, I want to enjoy this life.
Poor families from the bottom rung should leave. The meat will taste bad.
At a fancy steakhouse, when my daughter Jessica ordered cheaper meat, a banker at the next table started to pick on her. Her name is Julie Robinson, and we've had run-ins with her before. At the height of my anger, I decided to make a significant decision. My name is Michelle Stevens. I'm turning 50 this year and am a part-time working housewife. Due to being born to a father who loved collecting paintings, our family home was adorned with many artworks. I believe my dad often talked about paintings even during dinner, mentioning things like,
"The use of color in that painting is exceptional," or "the artist who drew that was struggling in life back then, and it reflects in the art."
Given the environment I grew up in, it wouldn't have been surprising if I had become an artist, but sadly, I had no talent in drawing. In my report cards, I always scored a C in art, and even now, I don't get the appeal of abstract paintings. However, my dad never discouraged me and told me to do what you love, so I studied economics in college. I met my current husband in college, and we got married when I was 25. A year after our marriage, Jessica was born. This life event led me to quit my job back then and fully focus on raising her. Once Jessica started elementary school and didn't need constant care, I started my part-time job. While my husband had a good income, I wanted to set an example for her by working as well. Fortunately, Jessica grew up well and is now a 24-year-old hardworking professional. She seems to face various challenges at work, but is leading a lively life. Jessica loves steak, and about once a month, she, my husband, and I visit a fancy steakhouse. I also love meat, so I always look forward to our steak outings. When I lost both my parents around 2 years ago, going out for steak somewhat lightened my sorrow. Today as well, I've made lunch plans with Jessica to go to a fancy steakhouse. It's a weekday afternoon, but Jessica happened to have the day off, and I didn't have work either. My husband couldn't join us because he's on an extended business trip. But that's all right. Once he's back, we'll plan another outing with the three of us. As lunchtime approached, Jessica and I headed to our favorite steakhouse, and immediately started browsing the menu upon being seated. This restaurant is top tier, so the beef is, of course, delicious. However, their pork and chicken are equally tasty. The pork and chicken are also cheaper compared to beef, so we end up ordering them often. This time too, Jessica said, "I'll have the pork ribs and the juicy chicken, please." Of course, we didn't just order that, we also got some beef and rice. Soon after our orders started arriving, and Jessica and I eagerly began grilling. As we relished the meal, we finished the meat in no time. We thought of ordering some more. But then, from the table across the aisle, we heard a weird chuckling sound. Wondering what was going on, we turned to see a middle-aged, somewhat chubby woman giggling at us.
"Excuse me, is there a problem?"
I asked, only to have the woman laugh even more.
"Well, it's just funny. You come to such a fancy steak place and order cheap pork and chicken."
She had been observing what we were eating? It felt invasive and uncomfortable. What we chose to eat is our business.
"We happen to like pork and chicken."
Though I found her very rude, I tried to ignore her and focused back on the menu. But the woman from the next table wouldn't stop bothering us. "Pork and chicken, isn't that just bland? When there's delicious beef available, I can't understand why anyone would be so obsessed with pork and chicken."
Your meat is burning."
I pointed to the ladies' table.
"Huh? Oh no, it really is."
Jessica quickly grabbed the tongs. On the grill, an expensive-looking piece of meat was charred black. Julie was making a face, probably thinking it was because she was bothering us. I totally believe this was Julie's fault, but after moving the meat to her plate, she glared at us sharply.
"It's because of you too. The best meat in this place is ruined. This was the most expensive one. What are you gonna do about it?"
What can we do? I thought.
"How about ordering a new piece?"
I suggested hesitantly, but that only made Julie angrier.
"It was your fault that the meat got ruined. Why should I have to pay out of pocket and order again?"
Julie's anger seemed to be escalating, and she finally said, "Get out of this restaurant."
"Hey, this is a high-end steakhouse, right? The only thing to order here is the prime beef. Doesn't matter if they have pork or chicken on the menu. The right choice is beef. People nibbling on pork and chicken like they're poor should probably just leave."
At her absurd reasoning, both Jessica and I were dumbfounded. Seeing our reactions, Julie continued to rant.
"Only people like me, who can afford to dine here twice a week, should be using this place. After all, I work at Blue Bank. I'm an elite."
Blue Bank? Blue Bank, a major bank, is where I have an account. But something else caught my attention. I felt like I had seen Julie at Blue Bank before.
"Poor people like you have no right to taste the meat of this restaurant. Come on, just leave."
As I watched Julie continue to rant, I finally remembered where I had seen her.
"Didn't you have a disagreement with me at a Blue Bank ATM recently?"
She seemed to recognize me as well and pointed, saying, "Ah, that annoying woman." The story dates back about a month ago. I stopped by Blue Bank to withdraw some money from the ATM. For some reason, the ATM, which should have been functional, wasn't working. The screen was pitch black and it wasn't working. As I was wondering what the issue was, a bank employee with a name tag reading Julie approached. It was the same woman.
"Hey, what did you do? Did you break the ATM?"
Julie seemed to think I had broken the ATM and frowned at me.
"No, I didn't break it. It wasn't working from the start. I think there might be some issue with it."
I tried to explain, but Julie insisted that I had broken it.
"Don't try to act like it wasn't your fault."
Just then, the branch manager, Jim, arrived and asked what the problem was. When I explained the situation, Jim immediately apologized.
"I'm sorry. That ATM is out of order. But it seems the notice sign fell off. It wasn't your fault, and we apologize for accusing you. Julie, apologize."
Urged by Jim, Julie apologized, but she clearly looked displeased. Although her attitude was upsetting, I decided it wasn't worth making a fuss and left. I had almost forgotten about the incident with Julie, but here she was again. I briefly told Jessica about the previous incident, and she whispered, "I see." It was clear that, even if she didn't voice it, Jessica was taken aback by Julie's behavior. Seeing our reactions, Julie shouted, "Don't you dare look down on me, you poor people." By now, I could feel the stares of other customers. The staff was also looking over, unsure of how to intervene.
Please, keep your voice down. You're disturbing the other customers and the restaurant. Everyone's watching.
I tried to warn her. Julie, realizing she was drawing attention, muttered, "Oh, I'm sorry," and started eating again. However, when the attention shifted away, she audaciously sat at our table. She whispered, "Leave, you bottom-class poor family. The meat will taste bad. Until you leave, I'm gonna keep complaining in a low voice."
What?
I was getting frustrated. Julie was incredibly persistent. She seemed intent on bad-mouthing us until we left.
Mom, let's just leave. I've had enough to eat.
Jessica seemed to be annoyed and quickly stood up. She probably wasn't full yet, but her desire to distance herself from Julie must have prevailed. Realizing that Julie was not the kind of person to have a conversation with, I decided to give up on eating at this restaurant.
I get it. We'll go somewhere else.
Upon hearing that, Julie grinned at me.
Oh, finally got the hint? Gosh, poor people sure are slow to catch on.
Why do we have to leave because of someone like her? I wasn't gonna let this slide. I pulled out my phone, ready to retaliate.
I'm about to call Jim, the branch manager, and cancel a deposit of $3 billion. If you apologize right now, I might reconsider.
Hearing this, Julie's face turned to shock for a moment, then she chuckled.
What's this about a $3 billion deposit? There's no way someone content with pork and chicken could have that kind of money. Come up with a better lie.
Julie clearly didn't believe me. Her lack of customer awareness was glaringly evident, and I sighed.
All right, I'll call the branch manager. I'll step outside the restaurant to do so, but don't say I didn't warn you.
I took Jessica with me, settled the bill, and went outside. As I was about to make the call, Julie came out too.
This seems fun. I'll watch from here. You're probably not gonna call the branch manager, but some random guy, right? A setup? I can't wait to see who answers.
Annoyed by her taunting, I made the call. I dialed the number for Blue Bank and asked for Jim. Jim quickly came on the line, and when I explained the situation, he immediately apologized.
I'm so sorry. Julie has been incredibly rude. I'll make sure she doesn't bother you again, Ms. Michelle. We'll consider disciplinary actions against her. Please reconsider canceling the deposit? No, I can't trust a bank with employees like that. Being treated as poor just for eating pork and chicken is just too much. Plus, she treated me as a suspect regarding an ATM incident without any proof. If you let Julie continue, I feel it could lead to a major financial issue in the future. I'd like to cancel before that happens.
Jim was again heard apologizing, but then Julie snatched my phone and blurted out something unthinkable.
Who are you? Claiming to be the branch manager? Are you this poor woman's husband?
She genuinely believed she wasn't speaking with Jim. Sadly for her, she was indeed speaking to the real branch manager, Jim. After such disrespectful remarks, this wouldn't end well. From the other end, I heard Jim's angry voice shout, "Is that Julie speaking? I am Jim, the branch manager." Julie finally realized who she was talking to. Her face going pale.
Are you really the branch manager? I thought she was calling some random guy. I'm so sorry.
Julie kept apologizing over and over again. However, it was too late to apologize no matter how she tried. From the phone, you could hear the loud voice of Jim, the branch manager, and Julie's face went pale as if she were ill. Jim's voice was hard to hear at times, but the words "come in" immediately came through.
Yes. I'll pass the phone to Ms. Michelle now. I'm so sorry about that.
She then handed me the smartphone, saying, "Here you go, it's your phone call," with a courteous gesture. "Thanks," I replied. I took the phone and spoke with Jim again. He wanted me to apologize properly, so we headed to Blue Bank. All the while, Julie looked distraught and couldn't focus. When we arrived, Jim greeted us. We were led to a meeting room, and Julie was told to apologize. Without resistance, Julie said, "I am deeply sorry." She then sat down on a nearby chair, holding her head in despair.
Man, I was enjoying some fancy steak, and I didn't expect this. I shouldn't have played hooky.
Wait, you were playing hooky? I asked in surprise. Seeing my reaction, Julie looked taken aback.
Well, not exactly playing hooky, I was just a bit tired.
She tried hard to make an excuse, but it was too late. Jim, with an awkward expression, explained.
It's quite embarrassing, but Julie called in sick today due to a high fever. However, we found out from a call earlier that she was at a fancy steakhouse. In other words, she lied about being sick.
Come to think of it, it was a weekday afternoon. The bank was open for regular business hours. To use sickness as an excuse to eat fancy steak?
After being rude to a client and skipping work? I really can't trust you anymore,
I said in a sharp tone. Jim apologized again. And Julie kept apologizing, saying, "I'm so sorry." However, she then added, "But come on, a deposit of $3 billion? You can't blame me for being skeptical." Jim immediately pointed out.
Didn't I inform you about Ms. Michelle a long time ago? And yet, you didn't remember. This was your mistake, so stop complaining. Yes, I'm very sorry.
Julie's face showed regret as she apologized again. However, her demeanor didn't seem genuinely remorseful. It was evident she was merely apologizing because she was scolded.
That half-hearted apology is enough. But a deposit of $300 million does seem unreal, doesn't it? Let me explain. Actually, my father had a passion for collecting paintings, but he passed away a few years ago. I kept his paintings as a keepsake for a while, but unfortunately, I couldn't appreciate their true value. I decided to sell them to someone who'd cherish them more, and when I did, my account ballooned to $300 million.
Is that even possible? Julie was more shocked than convinced. I was equally surprised when I sold the paintings, wondering how they could fetch such a high price. I understood how she felt. I didn't want to give my father's treasured paintings to just anyone, so I had them professionally appraised and sold them for their rightful value. As a result, I ended up with an unbelievable sum. I sold the last painting about 3 months ago. I wondered about keeping such a massive amount idle, but between part-time jobs and house chores, I just left it in the Blue Bank.
I've decided to close the account. I think my late father would advise against leaving so much money untouched. It's the money he left for me, so I don't want to keep it in an unreliable institution.
Upon hearing this, Jessica nodded.
I agree with my mom. Having someone like Julie involved with such a significant amount of money does naturally raise concerns.
Hearing this, Jim looked resigned. Understood. We'll go ahead and cancel that for you. Later on, Julie will be dealt with strictly. Just when I thought everything was settled, Julie continued her pleas.
Please wait a minute. What's gonna happen to me? Please don't punish me. You're not gonna fire me, are you? Stop causing a scene in front of the customer. Miss Michelle, I'm terribly sorry. Please don't mind Julie's behavior.
Before I knew it, Jim stepped in, but Julie suddenly gripped my arm tightly.
Please, I beg you. Convince the manager not to penalize me. If my pay gets cut or I get fired, I'll be in big trouble. Truth be told, I have debts. A bank worker with debts? And yet you're eating at fancy steakhouses? Maybe start with some budgeting?
When I said this with a stern tone, Julie's face looked like she was about to cry.
Don't be so cold. Once I started living luxuriously, I couldn't stop. Hey, why not share some of your $300 million with me? Just $100,000 would do.
What an absurd request.
Why should I give you any money? I don't want to give you even a penny.
When I pushed back, Julie's face turned beet red, and she snapped.
Stingy rich folks, aren't you? Do you guys even work? Having $300 million and still working? How much do you love money? Rich folks like you taking away jobs from others is simply low class. Our employers consider Jessica and I as formal employees. You have no right to tell us to quit.
I got my work ethic from my parents' upbringing. Because we were wealthy enough to collect high-end paintings, we were well off back home. However, my parents, fearing I would develop a skewed sense of money, always tried to maintain an ordinary lifestyle. My dad worked diligently, and my mom put her all into house chores and her part-time job. If my parents had been lazy just because they were rich, I might have never thought of working earnestly and might have ended up unemployed. Now, as an adult with a child, I've taken after my parents, and I've raised Jessica with the same values. I took on part-time jobs because I wanted Jessica to see a hard-working woman as a role model. Perhaps that's why Jessica never became lazy and grew up to be a responsible adult in society.
Also, working helps you learn common sense in society, and it adds structure to your life. That's why, even if we have money, we believe in working. I don't want unsensible folks like you meddling in our affairs.
When I firmly spoke my piece, Julie was at a loss for words. Jim also said with a stern face, "I get it, you're not remorseful. I'm gonna discuss firing you with the higher-ups, so brace yourself." Upon hearing this, Julie snapped back to reality.
I'm so sorry, Ms. Michelle. I've been so stressed out lately and ended up complaining without thinking. I don't need a penny, just please forgive me.
Obviously, after this series of events, I didn't feel like forgiving her.
We don't need your insincere apologies. Face the consequences and suffer for it. I won't forgive you either. It's absurd that after saying such horrible things, you don't genuinely feel remorse.
Following my lead, when Jessica spoke, it seemed Julie finally grasped that she wasn't getting any sympathy. She slumped dejectedly, muttering apologies over and over, but nobody comforted her. Later, I heard from Jim that Julie was fired. She was already known for being frequently late and was often rude to her juniors, so she had multiple issues with her work ethic. With this incident on top, she was swiftly fired. I heard that the moment Julie was informed of her termination, she collapsed on the spot. Reluctantly, an ambulance was called, and at the hospital, they discovered she had diabetes. Seems she didn't consider her age and indulged in meats and sweets daily, which has now put her in a critical condition. Currently, I heard Julie is hospitalized, and the medical bills are piling up. Losing a job while in debt, and on top of that having health issues, her future's probably gonna be pretty tough. The way things turned out for her feels like a harsher punishment than I expected, so my resentment towards her has faded. Jessica seemed to feel the same way, saying, "If she's suffering that much, let's let bygones be bygones." On my end, I decided to manage the 3 billion yen I had in Blue Bank, which I guess would be something like $30 million here. After discussing it with my husband, who just returned from a long business trip, and Jessica, we decided to keep only what we'd need for the future and donate the rest. I didn't want any unnecessary attention, so I donated anonymously. This way, we didn't get any weird looks from the public. The money we kept? We didn't leave it in Blue Bank, we put it in a different one. Our family tradition of going out for steak is still going strong. In fact, we all went out just yesterday. My husband was with us this time. We ordered not just beef but also pork and chicken. No one gave us any side glances, and we thoroughly enjoyed our meal. Both Jessica and my husband seemed pleased, and I personally had a blast enjoying the meat. I want to keep making these happy moments with my family. Of course, we're gonna keep an eye on our health too.